Hello, everyone. I am Gustavo Tolosa, the webinar coordinator and host for Dr. McDougall, and we're back on another week, another really exciting presentation. Actually, this is one of has been requested many times. What we're going to do is, this is Dr. McDougall's masterpiece, one of them, but certainly the latest one. The Starch solution. It wasn't until I read this book that I had revelation after revelation after revelation, and I was able to lose all of my 80 pounds and keep them off. And I know that you have many questions. Dr. McDougall has answered just about every question that you have in the book. So if you haven't read it, I highly recommend that you get a copy of the book. I will bring in Dr. McDougall in just a second. And remember, for those of you who are here the first time and may not be familiar with him, Dr. McDougall is a regular doctor, physician, practitioner who is an internist, certified, and he treats patients, regular patients. He prescribes medicine, but he uses a plant-based starch-centered diet to treat many of these illnesses. So Dr. McDougall, thank you again for being here this week. And I would like to ask you to maybe give us a little overview of the Starch solution.
The Starch solution. That's my last baby. It was supposed to, it was supposed to be the last book I ever wrote, but Harper One came to me, and that's a big book company, and they said that they can help me write a better book. And I said, I doubt it, but they really believe that they're going to put out the masterpiece of Dr. McDougall's. So it'll be probably 13 books. So we're giving it a good try. We're quite a bit along the way. I've got some great editors working with me, so I'd like to prove them right. There's a lot of good material. And by the way, in that book, The Healthiest Diet on the Planet, will be Dr. McDougall's color picture book in full color. That was part of the agreement. I have to get that book out to people. And those of you who have not seen Dr. McDougall's color picture book, it's on my website. It's free. It's in 22 different languages. And it takes you about maybe 6 minutes to go through it. But the Starch solution will also be the centerpiece of The Healthiest Diet on the Planet, the new book. As it was the McDougall Plan, which I published in 1983, and every other book that I've written. Fortunately, I came upon the wisdom that starch is the food for human beings. And the short story is, my eyes were opened by Dr. Dennis Burkett, who was a physician who practiced in Uganda, Africa. If you want to learn about him, and I encourage you strongly to do this, go to my February 2013 newsletter and view a 1-hour video, the only video that exists of Dr. Burkett. He told me that people in Uganda, they weren't sick, they weren't fat, they didn't have breast cancer, colon cancer, prostate cancer, multiple sclerosis. He told me all these things in 1971. I had a chance to put him on video, the only video that exists of him. Don't miss this opportunity. He opened my eyes. Then the next thing that turned me on about starch, that starch was the real deal, was when I worked with 5,000 starch eaters. That was when I was a sugar plantation doctor between 1973 and 1976. My Filipino, Japanese, Chinese, and Korean patients lived on rice, and they're strong, healthy, fit, didn't have any of the diseases that I was trained to treat when I went to Michigan State University. And then the next step in me learning the importance of starch came from Nathan Pritikin. And Nathan Pritikin is a very famous man. You should all know about him. You can go to my February 2013 newsletter. That's the one right after Dr. Burkett. And you can watch a 1-hour interview of Nathan Pritikin, the only interview that exists, the only video interview that exists. I had the opportunity and wisdom to put him on tape. And then you can also, if you go to my December 2013 newsletter, you can learn about Dr. Walter Kempner, who was, his program was at Duke University for 7 decades. And back in the 1940s, 50s, and 60s, he was curing malignant hypertension, terrible, terrible congestive heart disease, arthritis, kidney disease, obesity, all kinds of problems using rice, a starch. The most powerful medical therapy there is a starch-based diet. I don't know that you have to use rice, but he did use rice. He had some reasons. I think it would work just as well with, and maybe better with, sweet potatoes or so on. So that's how I was introduced to starch multiple times. And of course, I've treated as inpatients over 6,000 people with a starch-based diet, so I know how it works. Starch is a dirty word today. It turned into a dirty word in 1977 when industry decided to make it complex for people to understand their food. Prior to 1977, if you were going over to mom or grandma's house for dinner, they would tell you about the starch that they were having for dinner. Well, somebody got the wisdom that if we stopped calling it starch and we called it complex carbohydrate, it'd be so scientific, complex carbohydrate, that they wouldn't know what they were eating. So starch was vilified. And when people talk about starch, they're talking about something evil. But it wasn't evil before 1977. It was the word they used to describe potatoes, beans, corn, and so on. So we have to reintroduce the real meaning of starch and let you know that that's the food that you eat. You are a starch eater. You are a starchitarian. You are a starchivore. Starch. So what's starch? Well, starch, that's the parts of plants that store lots of sugar, carbohydrate. You see, plants need stored sugar to rejuvenate, to sprout, to become anew when the new season comes, to germinate. So they store a lot of energy in plant parts, like underground plant parts such as potatoes, tubers, bulbs. They store this energy so that when winter is over, they can grow a new plant. And then there are above ground storage organs, and they're called seeds. And these would be things like grains, wheat, corn, barley, or seeds like in form of legumes, beans, peas, and lentils. So that's the food for people. That's the food people are to eat. I thought my first duty today was to tell you 20 things that were good about starch. And actually, Gustavo had something a little bit different in mind, but he said, go ahead, do it anyways. So I will. I'll tell you some of the things that I thought about starch, and I'll try and be brief. First of all, they're easy to grow. You know, any gardener grows corn and potatoes, and they're very, very easy to grow plants. They're inexpensive. They're dirt cheap. You can get 20 pounds of potatoes at Costco for about $10. You can get 25 pounds of beans for like $14. You can get 50 pounds of white rice for something around $28. They're really cheap. And that's the food that people are buying. Unfortunately, that's not the food they are buying. I had an interesting experience a couple of months ago. We were at Costco and there was a Latino family going through the cashier line. Overweight man, overweight woman, 3 overweight children. And I'm watching mom watch the cash register. And the food goes by. And of course, it's the usual stuff they're taught to eat, the cheese and the meat and so on. The food goes by, and all of a sudden, mom says, stop. All we have is $300. We can't take the rest of the food. And I held myself back. And of course, Mary's right there to grab my shoulder, so I didn't do it. But I was going to go up to that mom and dad, and I was going to say, put all that stuff back and go buy some beans and rice and potatoes. And it will cost you a third of what you planned on spending. And your health and your weight would be improved. You're just suffering under the lies that all Americans suffer under, that the animal foods are the good foods. They're the ones that build the bones and the muscles. This is just a plain and simple lie. which I've dealt with and I'm going to be dealing with in greater detail. Their ancestors, their grandmothers lived on corn and beans and vegetables, and that's what they should be living on. So anyway, starches are inexpensive, and with people struggling to make the ends meet, to pay the bills, this is important. They're high energy. The winners of long distance events like marathons and triathlons and bicycle events, they carbohydrate load, they starch load. Don't kid yourself. Don't use that word carbohydrate. They load up on pasta and potatoes and rice. These are called starches. They're complete nutrition. Starches have all the protein, all the calcium, all the fiber, and all the vitamins you need, with a couple of exceptions. They're not a good source of B12, so we add B12 to our diet. Underground storage organs, such as potatoes and sweet potatoes, have all the vitamins you need. In fact, the potato is known as the anti-scurvy food because they used it to cure scurvy because it has vitamin C. So your underground storage organs, they have vitamin C and A. The above ground storage organs, the seeds, in other words, the grains and the legumes, they're absent in vitamin A and C. And so you have to add maybe a slice of orange or a flower out of broccoli to get the A and C that you'd be missing. Just a tiny bit of these kinds of non-starchy foods that you have to add for those two vitamins if you're just going to live on grains. They're low on the food chain. As a result of being lower on the food chain, the environmental pollutants that are so prevalent from industry and other wastes, they're in low content in your starchy foods. As the animals eat the starches, like the cows eat the grains and so on, as you move up the food chain, because these chemicals are fat attracted, fat soluble, they concentrate 1,000-fold or more these poisons as you go up on the food chain. So if you want to eat organic, or in a sense you want to get away from the chemicals in your food, you eat starches. You get your energy from starches. If you get your energy from pigs and cows and chickens and fishes, you're getting methyl mercury, you're getting all kinds of deadly DDT, deadly chemicals, heptachlor. So eat starch to get your calories and get away from the chemicals. They're kind to animals. Think about it. If you've ever been to a stockyard, you ever watch one of those animal rights videos about the farm factories, you got to have a conscience. Eating corn doesn't make anybody scream, holler, struggle, or cry. So, that may be important to you. They're environmentally friendly. You can grow 17 times more calories on a piece of land with starch than you can with animal food. In fact, the difference is as high when you compare beef, say, to potatoes. The difference in production is as much as 100-fold. And living on a planet which is food stressed, we have a real risk of food shortage. And maybe not for us rich people, but for the people that are living on the margins, it's a real problem. And we need to grow more food and healthy food. Starches don't grow microbes. They don't grow E. coli. They don't grow mad cow disease. They don't grow staphylococci. They don't grow listeria. And if a starch has a contaminant on it, which you don't hear much, you usually hear non-starchy vegetables do, or fruits like tomatoes and cantaloupes and things like that. It wasn't because the plant food grew those microbes, those viruses, those bacteria, those prions. It's because some cow or pig or person pooped on the food. It comes from their excrement. Starches taste good. Yeah, many of you can, all of you can enjoy the taste of a sweet potato if you like sweet potatoes. They're very sweet. Fresh corn. You don't even need to add the salt and butter. And it really, really, really tastes good. baked potatoes, boiled potatoes, mashed potatoes were my favorite food growing up. I lived in a family where animal products were consumed in great amounts because my mother and dad believed that was the best nutrition for their children. Of course, that was false. And it was information laid down and propagated by the livestock industry, but they believed it. So we ate lots and lots of meat, eggs, etc. Of course, some of you know I had a massive stroke at 18, and I certainly attributed it to the industry's message. But my favorite food, I want to tell you, my favorite food, the thing I looked forward to most was a great big plate of mashed potatoes with peas and corn and some gravy over the top. Now, of course, you know how my mom made the gravy, but Mary and you can make a gravy that tastes even better without killing a cow. So they're tasting good because starch is full of sugar, and you have taste buds on the tip of your tongue that taste sugar. You're a sugar seeker. Now, my cat Einstein, who's in the other room, he has no sugar tasting taste buds. He has taste buds that taste protein, amino acids. Einstein has no interest in mashed potatoes. Just like I have no interest in the food that Einstein brings to my back door every other day, which happens to be a dead bird or a dead rat. We're different. We're designed as sugar enjoyers, and starch is 80, 90% sugar. Starch stores well. You can take potatoes and dry them and store them for 10 years and they'll be just as good. You could store rice and beans in a bag in a cool, dry place for years. You don't need a refrigerator and all the energy that goes into powering that coolant. It's just easy, safe, storable food. Starch is. And if there is a time of shortage, food shortage, and you got a 5-gallon bucket of rice and dried potatoes and beans, you're in there for a few days of good eating. If there are some tough times and the refrigerator goes out for your friends, they're going to be in big trouble in about 2 days. So they're good for storing. They're easy to travel with. Don't require any particular refrigeration to travel with. Starches are great for losing weight because they have no fat. Remember, the fat you eat is the fat you wear. You say that all the time to yourself, don't you? All the time. Every time you have a spare thought, you go, fat I eat is the fat I wear. If I eat that olive oil, I'm going to wear it. Okay. So there's virtually no wearable starch or wearable fat in starch. There's enough fat to supply all your needs. Remember, starches are complete in protein, have all the calcium, all the fat, all the fiber, all the vitamins you need, except for the A and C that we talked about. And sometimes people come to me and they ask about which starch is better. What should I pick? Rice, wheat, corn, potatoes, barley? It doesn't matter. There have been populations of millions of people who have had one dominant starch, like the Aztecs and the Mayan or the people of the corn. The Incas, people of the Andes, were the people of the potatoes. The Far East folks, you think about rice. Middle East, wheat and barley. It makes no difference. Starches are all created equal. So pick the starch you like, the 1 or the 2 or the 5 starches or whatever you want. Another thing I want to point out is there's a book called Blue Zones. And the Blue Zones talk about the longest lived people on planet Earth. And Dan Buettner is the author, and I've had him out over the last year twice to be a guest speaker. And the first time I met Dan, he talked about the Blue Zones. There are a couple more he has also, where people live longest and healthiest, and he tries to figure out the characteristics of the long-lived people. They started in 2006, a January 2006 National Geographic article. He's a writer for National Geographic. So the first time I met him, we talked. He gave his presentation. He talked about the people from Sardinia, Italy, Okinawa, Loma Linda. Talked about a lot of life qualities that these people have that encourage living a long time. But the one thing he talked about all those populations is what they ate. And he mentioned the starches, the rice, the sweet potatoes. He mentioned the fact that Loma Linda Seventh-day Adventists are vegetarians that live off starchy foods. But he didn't ever put it together completely until a breakfast we had that first morning. And I looked at Dan and I said, do you know that what you're talking about? Those all populations you have identified, and there are 5 to 8 now that he's identified. The one single common characteristic is they all live on starch-based diets. These are the longest lived people. And, it was an epiphany for him. He just, his face went blank. He said, I never put that together. I never thought about that. And we've become very good friends, and I've learned a lot from him, and he's learned a few things from me. And when you hear his presentations these days, he doesn't shy away from saying starch, that these people live on a starch-based diet. So you got inexpensive food, you've got environmentally friendly food, you've got clean food, no cholesterol and starch, by the way. And you got the food that lets you live the longest and healthiest and thinnest and strongest. What else could you ask for? But you got a question?
Very good. Thank you. You have already answered many of the questions that we had compiled here. So that's great. And I want to, some people are asking about the replay. We do record these webinars and they are available later on Dr. McDougall's website at drmcdougall.com, and they're free. So if you have any friends that want to watch it, all you have to tell them is to go to the website and they can watch the webinar. So Dr. McDougall, yes, I have several questions, and this is going to be a marathon. So you have about 2 minutes per question.
I'm going to I'm going to do 30-second answers.
Oh, all right. Okay, here we go. So first question, on page 22 of your book, The Starch Solution, you say that we cannot convert excess carbohydrates to body fat. Can I really eat all the bread and pasta I want and not gain weight?
Yes, you can. And I didn't say you can't at all make the conversion. It's just the conversion is very inefficient. It's called de novo lipogenesis. In other words, the new production of fat from carbohydrate. People are very inefficient at doing that. And if you read the chapter and then go to the references, you'll find at least 5 scientific references that tell you that the human being does not convert carbohydrate, sugar, to fat with any sort of efficiency. So yes, you can eat as much carbohydrate as you want. And what we're talking about is starch, not soda pop bottles filled with 3,000 calories of fructose. Even if you feed pure white sugar, and I give you a demonstration in that chapter, it takes a long time to accumulate a little bit of fat, even eating pure sugar. So look at that reference in the Starch Solution, and you will understand that sugar does not make you fat, particularly starch does not make you fat. Think about all the billions of Asians that used to be thin 30 years ago. Not one fat one. And so anyways, that is what the truth is. You can't change our metabolic process.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so another question. I understand that we have no need for processed oils, but is it really safe to eat no added fat in the form of nuts, seeds, and avocados? Don't we at least need to consume some flax or chia seeds daily for our omega-3 fatty acids?
All the fat you need is in the food. For example, potatoes are 1% fat. There are 2 experiments that were done, and they're printed in the, well, one of them is printed in the Starch Solution book. It's an experiment where they took a man and a woman. Well, actually, they did add fat to the diet because they were losing too much weight. But there have been populations of people in the Andes and around the world that have lived on all potato diets, which are 1% fat. No, you don't need to add any extra fat. The fat is in the food. And the fat that's in there, about a third of it is what we call essential fatty acids. There has never been a case of fatty acid deficiency on a starch-based diet with no added fat. And it doesn't do you any good to add extra omega-3 fats. You need enough good fat, omega-3 and omega-6, which, by the way, are only made by plants. No animal makes these essential fats. There's enough of these fats to supply all your fatty acid needs. The only case of fatty acid deficiency I've ever heard of, and I'm getting past my 30 seconds, is back when they started making baby formulas, back in the 30s. The babies started getting fat from these artificial formulas, milk formulas. And because the baby started getting fat, the manufacturers made a non-fat version. And they fed it to the babies, and they developed fatty acid deficiency, cracks in their skin, dry skin. But that's the only time I've ever heard of fat deficiency ever occurring. And it has never occurred under any natural circumstance. You don't have to worry. You don't have to eat the nuts. It's not going to do you any more good if you eat flaxseed. Let me make a qualification. If you eat a low-fat diet, what will happen is your hair will be less greasy and your skin will be drier. So some people complain of that. They want to have a moister, more oily-looking complexion. They think that's attractive. And the way you do that, in my opinion, is you oil your skin from the outside, not the inside. But if you have that issue, you can eat peanuts and cashews and pistachios and seeds, and your skin will become noticeably oilier, shinier. And a consequence of that will likely be you will grow pimples, which sometimes turn into blackheads and whiteheads. And so it's not going to do your complexion, in my opinion, any good.
Right, right. Okay, very good. So for those of us who are on a no added fat diet for long term, should we supplement with DHA or EPA for better brain health?
You know, the way to get people's attention is to say that if you don't eat this, you're going to become mentally incompetent. But a better way to get them is you tell them if you eat more of this, you'll be more potent, sexually potent. So those are the ways to get people's attention. Don't eat this. Sex life and brain life are going to be in trouble. DHA and EPA are elongated alpha-linoleic acid molecules. The plant makes ALA, and that is a carbon chain with a bond missing at the carbon-3 position. So we call it omega-3 fat. That is the basic omega-3 fat, and only plants can do that. But what fish and other animals can do is and people can do is elongate. In other words, stick these omega-3 chains, short chains together, and elongate them into EPA and DHA. But the argument is that people can't do that, and so they have to get it from other animals who make this elongation. People can do it just fine. The thing about populations of the world, not everybody lived next to an ocean or a lake or some other concentrated source of EPA or DHA, and they just did fine. And if you want to find the scientific studies, they're present in the book, The Starch Solution, that clearly show that human beings can make the conversion from the basic ALA, which is made by plants only, elongate it to DHA and EPA. No problem. And that's what the science says. And that's what practical thinking should say.
Very good.
But it's a way to sell fish oil and DHA oil. And it's also a way, there's all these little tricks past eating starches, vegetables, and fruits. These are also answers for people as to why they're not getting better. I must be missing something. There must be some little trick out there, or some little supplement that I'm missing, that it causes me to not lose my weight, not to feel as good as I could or possibly feel. No, folks. No, folks. What you need is to live on a starch-based diet. 70, 80, 90% of your diet is starch. Add some non-starchy vegetables and some fruits. Go for a walk and get some sunshine. Boom. That's it. And then if you need anything else because in some way you're different or damaged, then look to the doctors. And you can also look to the supplement salespeople. But to me, I'll group them together. For chronic diseases, physicians and supplement salesmen, they're the same. What they do is they take fat, sick people and convert them into fat, sick people that are carrying around a bag full of drugs. That's all they do.
That's right.
Your wallet is smaller, and you got to carry this bag of drugs around. Remember to take your pills. Your health is always trying to get out of your body. You just got to stop poisoning yourself with foods, not getting enough sunshine, and not going for a walk. And be careful about that walk. Don't turn it into a walk, and that walk into an automobile accident, or a bicycle ride into some other kind of accident. And you've got to be careful when you exercise. I'm going out here windsurfing here, and as soon as it warms up a little bit, and where I windsurf, the sharks are 3 times as big as me. But I figure when I go out there, I figure that once I fall, and the first time I've fallen, I worry. I go, oh boy, there's a big weight around here, I'm sure. But I figure after I get back on my board, I figure if they didn't get me the first time, then they're not going to get me the second time, and I don't worry anymore. Or I used to go scuba diving with some friends, and we'd drop in the water, and we always go to shark-infested waters because that happens to be one of my, maybe fetish isn't the right word. But anyways, I just love sharks. And so we go to a place called Cocos Island off Costa Rica where the really big sharks are. Tiger sharks, all kinds of beautiful, beautiful animals. And as we jump in the water, one of my friends would look at me and say, well, the sharks, they're all over the place, hammerheads, thousands of them. And I looked back at him one day and I said to him, his name was Ron. He weighed about 280 pounds. I said to Ron, hey, Ron, they eat the fat ones first. So you gotta pick who you go in the water with.
Right. Very good.
He had a good sense of humor and a thick wetsuit.
Very funny. Well, thank you for sharing that, Dr. McDougall. People are really enjoying your stories. So here, another question that I hear a lot is, why does drinking alcohol make it so hard to lose weight?
Well, alcohol, the molecule alcohol does not convert into fat. Okay? It does not convert into fat. Just like carbohydrate does not convert into fat with any efficiency. As far as I know, alcohol doesn't do it at all, convert it into fat. If you know serious drinkers, alcoholics, they're all very thin. The reason alcohol makes people fat is because it relieves inhibitions. You can't control yourself. After a couple of drinks, that one potato chip you were going to have turns into 3 bags. Alcohol also is preferred to be burned by the body as a fuel over fat. So if you drink alcohol, it's going to leave fat in your fat cells. Alcohol does provide calories. That's one important thing to understand. It's the moderate drinker or the social drinker that gets into trouble because of, as I say, they just lose control of everything, including how much they eat. But alcohol does not, the molecule alcohol will not turn into fat for storage. Right.
Someone was asking about diabetes. There is a webinar on diabetes on Dr. McDougall's website. I recommend that you see that, because in it you talk about, Dr. McDougall, about how starch equal, what some doctors say, starch equals sugar, is bad for you, but you explain it in that video how that is not true.
It's there. It's also in my 2009 newsletter. There's an article about diabetes. A lot of articles. And what you will learn is that sugar actually makes insulin work better. And fat is the component that paralyzes insulin and creates a diabetic situation. Being over fat is the cause of type 2 diabetes. And if you have type 2 diabetes, it's 100% curable by losing the weight. Even if you lose the weight by rearranging your stomach with bariatric surgery, you cure 80% of type 2 diabetics. But most people have what I call pancreatic insufficiency. They have type 1.5 diabetes. They make some insulin, but not enough. Type 1 diabetics, they always have to take insulin. Yep. There's also there's a video. There's all kinds of articles I've written on diabetes, and what you'll find is that carbohydrate, starch-based diet, is the easiest way to lose weight, especially permanently. It is kindest to your body. It removes the other risk factors like high cholesterol, high salt, high saturated fat, high environmental chemicals like we talked about. It removes all these other things that come along with the typical meat-based, dairy product-based diet that give people blindness and kidney failure. So even if somebody's a type 1 diabetic and they eat a clean diet, a starch-based diet, their organs are preserved. They don't go blind. Their kidneys stay healthy. But because they're metabolically handicapped, because they've lost their pancreas, when you feed foods that blind people and give people heart attacks and strokes that don't have diabetes, if you turn around and feed them to metabolically handicapped people with insulin insufficiency, they fall apart at a rapid rate, so that within 11 to 17 years, almost all type 1 diabetics have had major complications with their eyes, their kidneys, heart trouble. However, I have met, this is one of the jewels of living a long time. I've met a lot of people. I have met type 1 diabetics. They were actually patients of Dr. Walter Kempner, who taught them the rice diet, which is 93% sugar, folks. I don't mean white sugar. It's rice, juice, and white sugar. 93% of the calories come from sugar. And the several people that I've met over the years who followed the rice diet for decades, I mean like 4 decades, not a thing wrong with it. Not a bit of eye damage or kidney damage, nothing. All they had to do is take supplemental insulin and eat a good diet. So if you are a type 1 diabetic, get smart. Don't eat the things that blind and kill and damage hearts of people who don't have diabetes. It's, makes no sense at all. You got to take special care of yourself. You're a special person.
Right, right. Dr. McDougall, earlier you were talking about rice, and people have questions, basically 2 things, white or brown, and what about the arsenic hysteria about rice?
Okay, I have a whole newsletter on the arsenic in rice, and I think I published it about this time last year. You'll find it easily if you just type in, you go to my search engine and type in rice and arsenic. It'll pop up just like that. We have a tremendous search engine on the website, and I wrote a whole article about the rice arsenic scare. And I think it's just, in part, one of those things that makes people say there's nothing safe to eat. Now rice is not good. I'll just have to eat more pork chops. But anyways, I talk about it in great detail there. About rice, brown rice, whole grain rice is best, period. No question about it. We serve only whole grain rice at our clinic. Now, tomorrow, when we go to Kauai with a group of people on our adventure trip, and I hope you're coming, we will have dishes that are also made with white rice. It's an adventure. It's a vacation. It's not a time where you have to be absolutely pure. White rice is not a deal breaker for me. If you go out, say, for lunch or a trip, and you can't find anything to eat, if you go into a Chinese restaurant, you are way, way, way better off ordering a couple bowls of rice and some steamed vegetables than you would be ordering the greasy fried chicken, mushu, whatever dish. White rice, white rice has powered several billion people in Asia. And remember, we almost lost World War II to rice eaters, white rice eaters, and we lost the Vietnam conflict to white rice eaters. It is a good food. Brown rice is a better food. And I'm going to extend my 30 seconds and tell you it's a form of bigotry, social bias. White rice is. When I worked as a doctor in Hawaii and took care of Filipino, Japanese, Chinese patients, and they came to see me, and I explained the diet to them, they said, it's all okay, except I'm not eating brown rice. And I said, why aren't you eating brown rice? And their answer was, poor people eat brown rice. Clean people, good people, wealthy people like us, we only eat white rice. I'm not eating brown rice. So I said, fine, it's not a deal breaker. Eat your white rice, eat the rest of the diet. Worked out just fine.
Okay. Yeah, very good. That's a very good point.
You're a well-traveled man, Gustavo. You know that in every culture, there are foods of class. And rice has to be one of them. There are certain kinds of fish that were in the rivers and streams in Michigan that only colored people ate, dark colored people.
Right.
And so us white people, we would never eat that class of fish. And I'm sure every culture you go to, a class designated by skin color or some other type of social issues is stigmatized by some kind of food, which is a big part of their social life. Right or wrong, and it is wrong.
Okay, very good. What about beans? Someone is asking, still restricted to 1 cup a day as written in earlier books, or unlimited as shown in the color picture book?
No, I think when I put things together for the McDougall plan, which was over 35 years ago, I had done 6 years of work. And I even put pictures over the recipes to identify high protein foods which contain beans. And I was writing a book to treat my patients that had kidney disease and osteoporosis and kidney stones, things related to too much protein. And so as a recommendation to all of my patients, I identified the high protein, like bean foods. And in my instructions to them, I told them to eat very little or none of those. But I figured if that load of protein, which 30% of the calories are protein, put a stress on people that you can see who already have kidney disease, my assumption was that high protein of load for a healthy person could be significant also. But the main reason I said it is this, is some people like beans so much, and I'm one of them, they'd eat beans for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And that would be their sole source of starch. And that would mean their diet was 30% protein. And when your diet becomes over 16% protein, especially animal protein, it's much worse. But even vegetable protein, when it becomes over 16% protein, you start losing your bones. You start developing osteoporosis. And there are references, and they happen to be in the starch solution, that show that vegetable protein does cause negative calcium balance in terms of calcium being taken out of the bones and urinated into the toilet. These experiments were done on soy protein and wheat protein called seitan. So if these concentrated proteins do it, the vegetable proteins do it, I have made the assumption and still stick with it, the non-concentrated proteins like the beans, peas, and lentils have to be uh, uh, eaten with some caution too. And that's why I recommend 1 cup of cooked legumes a day. Somebody could prove me wrong if they ever did the experiment, but I would rather err on that side of telling people beans are a richer starch. Remember, rice is 5% protein. Beans are 30% protein. And that protein has to be dealt with. It's got to go someplace. It's not going to go to your muscles and make you look like Arnold Schwarzenegger used to look like. It's got to be dumped out through the kidneys. And that places increased flows on the kidneys, increased pressures in the kidney tubules. So I have to believe, until proven wrong, that I need to caution on the side of 1 cup of cooked beans a day. Now, that's a heck of a lot of beans. 1 cup of cooked beans a day. So yes, I still stick with it. I came to that decision almost 40 years ago. There's been nothing I've read that would suggest I'd do anything else. But beans taste good. I like them. I enjoy having some of them. But I'm darn certain I don't eat more than 1 cup a day.
Right. Okay. Very good. Now, that there is a lot of confusion about the term carbohydrate. And so a lot of people are asking if you could clarify the difference between starch and a carbohydrate, and the difference between a refined and an unrefined starch and or carbohydrate.
Well, carbohydrate is a term for sugar. Simple carbohydrates are things like table sugar or honey or fruit juice. They're simple carbohydrates, real sweet, taste sweet. And because they're, small chains of, like they're 2 molecules or 8 molecules or whatever, they have a strong impact on the taste buds and they taste sweet. When you make long chains of them, you have less exposure of whatever the sweet part of the carbohydrate is to the tongue, and they taste less sweet. So a carbohydrate is a potato. It's a tablespoon of sugar. It's a banana. Those are high carbohydrate foods. It's just that some come in the form of very long chains of amylose and amylose pectin. Very long chains, and those are what I call starches, and the food industry calls complex carbohydrate, which you don't know what the heck that is, so you don't know how to find it. So the long chain ones are starches, the long chain carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates. The short chain carbohydrates are sugars like sucrose and fructose and glucose and galactose and lactose, and those are the differences. Of course, you want most of your diet to be long chain, in other words, starches. And if you want to add a little treat, a little extra punch to the food, a little spike that makes it really go down. That Mary Poppins saying, a little sugar makes the medicine go down. So if you want to really enhance the food, you can put a little bit of simple sugar on your starches. I don't think that's an unreasonable compromise. As people listen to me, if they listen to me careful, they never hear me say it's good to eat white sugar. It's healthful to eat white sugar. But it's not the food poison that's been presented to the public these days.
Right.
And it shouldn't be the major focus of attention of the 2015 U.S. Dietary Guidelines, which it is. It should be a focus, and I like what they did, but they should focus on the real food poisons, which are the animal foods, like the ones that the egg industry and the dairy industry and the beef industry want you to eat, but they don't, because these industries dominate the U.S. Dietary Guidelines committees that make recommendations to the USDA and the Departments of Health and Human Service. And because of the money and the politics, and because they had to sacrifice one lamb out there, they picked the sugar. I don't know whether that's the right analogy, but somebody had to be sacrificed because of the obesity problem in this country, and sugar has always been known as an unhealthy food. And so I think they all got together and said, well, one of us has got to go, either the pork industry or the beef industry or the cheese industry or the fish industry or the sugar industry. And we've already let the salt industry go. So let's go after sugar, and then they won't pay attention to us. I know that's what they did. And you know what? I told you about the lawsuit that we filed against the USDA for the position they've taken on cholesterol. And it's moving forward. The next newsletter, which will be out probably tomorrow night, is a newsletter that discusses this lawsuit that we're moving forward with. They gave us something. They gave us something in the guidelines when they said that we took the limit of cholesterol consumed, which used to be 300 milligrams a day. We took that limit off. There's no longer no limit. But that doesn't mean that you can eat all the cholesterol you want. And then they went on and they said that the Institute of Medicine recommends that you should eat as least cholesterol as possible. They put that right in that sentence. And I think that was a result of them knowing that we were going to go after them in district court for what they've done to allow this poisonous substance and the foods that carry it to be continued to be recommended to Americans. I think they found out we were going to do this. And as a result, they changed what they intended to do and what the Dietary Guidelines Advisory Committee recommended, which was to remove all limits on cholesterol intake. You could eat all the animals you wanted. That was their intention. And I wrote about that in my June 2015 newsletter, how outraged I was when I talked about there are lies and damned lies. And damned lies hurt people and planet Earth. So I wrote that. Maybe they saw that. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they found out about what PCRM was going to do with the lawsuit, whatever. But clearly, if you read the opinion pieces in the Journal of the American Medical Association, that it is a grand thing that the guidelines no longer have a limit on how much fat you can eat, and also have considered a cholesterol a nutrient of no concern. That's what they intended to do. And then I wrote my piece, and PCRM put their district court suit together, and they changed their statement to a statement that says the Institute of Medicine recommends that you should eat as little cholesterol as possible. Cholesterol is only in animal foods. So that means to me, we should all be eating a starch-based diet with vegetables and fruits. The dietary guidelines are the guidelines that are used for our school children. That means that our school children should be given vegan diets, starch-based diets, at least as an option. At least as an option because of that statement. Oh boy, all kinds of things could happen. I am so excited about this. We have no money. They've got $23 million a year to spend to beat us. That's what they have set aside for promotion of eggs. And you know what? If they find us the slightest bit of threat, at least part of that money is going for us. And we have no money. They have the deep pockets. But if, the David and Goliath, if just little people like myself and a few other doctors in California and the grand people from PCRM could beat that giant, boy, would that open the door. Would that open the door? Who would we go after next? Wonder who I'd go after. Who would I go after next? Hey, dairy industry, watch your back because I'm going to be there. And then meat, and then fish. I should go for fish first because I love fish so much.
Right.
But anyway, it could happen, and then again, they're going to play as dirty as they can. They're going to do everything they can, and we just may be put out of business. Who knows? But we did it. It's there. They're going to answer for it. It's in court. And the next newsletter will explain in some detail what they did and what the real truth is. And you all ought to read it, and you ought to send it to everybody you know and put it on every Facebook page there is and get some support behind us. And maybe we'll set up a 501c3 foundation and give you a chance to send a few dollars to help us pay our legal costs. Because right now it has all had to be paid through very small funds, let's just say.
Right.
But well, wouldn't that be fun? Wouldn't that, well, I was part of it. Wouldn't that be great if people had the truth about eggs and dairy and meat? And by the way, the next newsletter, so this is January, my plan is, and I get disrupted all the time, my plan is to take the dietary guidelines apart and show you what they did. What they did is they wrote guidelines to make sure people get enough nutrients, enough calcium, enough protein, enough fat. Well, excuse me, ladies and gentlemen, there are no cases ever reported of fat, calcium, or protein deficiency. But because these industries sell these nutrients of great concentration, the focus of the guidelines is on getting enough nutrients that people don't need. And I've never suffered deficiencies unless they're starving. And then what they do is kind of, they're kind of getting ready for the fact that there's going to be a backlash. And what they do after they tell you how important it is to eat dairy and meat, they warn you, don't eat saturated fat. Well, excuse me, saturated fat is synonymous with meat, poultry, dairy, and eggs. And then the fish section, you got to read the fish section. The fish section tells you about how important it is to get the omega-3 fatty acids, which I told you don't need from fish. And then they spend a considerable amount of time telling you about methylmercury and how poison it is to especially children. If I take a sample of your body and look for methylmercury, I can tell how much fish you eat because essentially all methylmercury comes from fish. So they say, you got to eat fish because it's omega-3s, good source of protein. That's the upfront pitch that industry has made, then put in the dietary guidelines. And then just so they can have some penance and say, well, we told you, we mentioned it. Then they tell you about the horrible things, some of the horrible things that you eat in an attempt to get nutrients you don't need and the poisons you don't want. That's gonna be my February newsletter. You think I'm excited enough about writing it?
That is going. I can't wait to see that.
Yeah.
We'll have to do a webinar on that one too.
Well, be sure and get the January one, which is finished. And let's see, it'll probably be out by Saturday evening, or at the very least Sunday. So sign up for the newsletter at drmcdougall.com. It's on my website. And
very good.
And some people don't know how to get to my website.
Yes, so, I have here I want to show everybody how you can easily go to drmcdougall.com, and when you go there, you are able to go here. Let me just quickly show you how under shop you can get Dr. McDougall's book or books. Right here in travel, you have the upcoming trip where Dr. McDougall is leaving tomorrow with a group of people to Hawaii. And under programs, then under education, you have the live webinars where you can all see all the webinars and many other things. So let's see, Dr. McDougall, I think that it is in the...
Point out that search engine too, on the far side, the search button.
This is an amazing tool where you type something like diabetes, let's say, and you click that button. And first it brings the other things, but then you can see the entries under Dr. McDougall's website. And you can type just about any topic and you will be able to see that.
Go back to the, under education on the left side.
Yes.
Hit that. And then what it says, this is another tool for finding things that are really good. hit that education button. Okay, under health and science, right? The one below, we're just below health and science.
Yes.
Click on that, and you see hot topics.
Right.
Can you click on hot topics?
There you go.
Okay. And then what you see is medical topics on arthritis, breast cancer, obesity, osteoporosis, and nutrition topics. And that lists the articles that I have written over the last, I don't know, it's last 15 years, which are former newsletters, most of them. And you can,
right.
if you have an interest like children and pregnancy, you go there, and it's an easy way to find those articles. And of course, all this is free. And then as long as we're playing with this, and we got a minute, we have any time left. Well, we're pretty much out of time. But under education, if you hit
where do you have the place for people? Okay, right here under McDougall newsletter is where you can sign up for the free newsletter. I highly recommend that. That's
okay.
Great.
If you do just one more thing that you keep talking about, I want to show them. If you could go back to education.
Right. Sure.
And you'll see something called videos.
Right. Oh, those are great.
Yeah. The videos, there's McDougall moments, which you automatically get sent once or twice a week. Free lectures are mostly lectures that I've given, but also experts. I mean, like H. Gilbert Welch and all these phenomenal people have given lectures, and they're up there free. And then those are mostly my lectures, but other people, Roy Swank, the guy that did multiple sclerosis, and H. Gilbert Welch, who's the most famous guy around for telling you, it's in the paper at least every week, telling you the harms that are done to you by screening. Anyway, thanks for introducing the website to people.
Well, thank you so much. This was a very informative. People have enjoyed this webinar a lot, and we look forward to seeing you, Dr. McDougall, next week. But you will be in Kauai, and you will be talking to us about arthritis.
I'll do arthritis. Hopefully, all the connections work, folks. If something doesn't work, it's because we tried hard, and you may think I'm going on a vacation. I am, in the sense that I get to see a lot of really good friends that go with us, traveling with us, and I get to meet a lot of new friends. But remember, I lived in Hawaii for 15 years, and it kind of feels like going back home. But it's fun for Mary and I, but I still will be working. I will be putting in my usual 12-hour days in the sunshine. I'll have a tan next week. How do you like that?
You're going to have a nice tan. Well, we will see you then, hopefully, if the internet cooperates. And thank you, everybody, for being here today.
And thank you, Gustavo, for your guidance and coordination of this webinar. We couldn't do this without your talent.
Really. Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Goodbye.
All right. Bye, everybody.